Okay, so we're back in the Mumonkan today. Case 19, ordinary mind is Tao. So there's a big overlap between Taoism and Zen. They're both prominent philosophical schools in China, and they influence each other heavily. And so when you see the word Tao, you could replace it with the way or with Zen. Like, what is the way? What is Zen? What is Tao? It's the same question. So this is Joshu, but this is Joshu as a student. So, everyone who starts koan study starts with Joshu's Mu, and Joshu shows up a whole bunch in the koan curriculum and is considered, his Chinese name is Chao Chu. He is considered to be a luminary. If we believe the writings, he attained enlightenment at the age of 60 and taught until he was 120. Of course, we know that mythologically Chinese folks love to venerate people of advanced age, so it may just be a myth, or maybe it's true, I don't know. But it's kind of cool because this is actually, Joshu is working with Nansen, so Nansen is Joshu's teacher. So even this maybe most famous Zen teacher who ever lived was also just a monk. And here's their interaction. Joshu once asked Nansen, "What is Tao?" Nansen answered, "Ordinary mind is Tao." "Then should we direct ourselves toward it or not?" asked Joshu. "If you try to direct yourself toward it, you go away from it," answered Nansen. Joshu continued, "If we do not try, how can we know that it is Tao?" Nansen replied, "Tao does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is illusion. Not knowing is blankness. If you really attain to Tao of no doubt, it is like the great void, so vast and boundless. How then can there be right and wrong in the Tao?" At these words, Joshu was suddenly enlightened. Whenever it says someone was suddenly enlightened, it can either mean that we're reporting the enlightenment experience of that master, because like in the Renzai school, we have the sudden enlightenment school, which is that you practice, and then you have this whoa epiphany, right? But then we also have the Soto school, which is the gradual enlightenment school, which is where you sort of the layers fall away over time, like leaves off a tree, and your enlightenment emerges. In the White Plum, we have transmission in both Soto and Renzai schools. So we do Soto practices like Shikantaza, where we're just sitting, and we also do koan study, which is the sudden enlightenment epiphany approach. And I tend to go with that way of thinking about it, that on the one hand, we have amazing epiphanies in our lives, but also gradually over time we shift. Both are realities that we work with. There's gradual awakening and there's sudden awakening. But at any rate, clearly in this moment, Joshu has an insight. So let's look at the first part first. So he says, ordinary mind is Tao. If you direct yourself toward it, you go away from it. So this is an interesting bit of feedback for a culture which is almost exclusively concerned with directing ourselves toward things. Right? Like, what's the goal? We gotta have our goals. And it's interesting because there's actually pretty good psychological research to suggest that goals are actually not that helpful. That what's actually most helpful is habits and systems. So like, if everyone has the goal of being financially stable and some people achieve it and others don't, well, was it the goal that took them there? Or was it, the subset of activities and behaviors and things that they were doing that created it? And what about the conditions, right? And not everyone lives under the same conditions. So what Nansen is saying is, if you direct yourselves toward it, you move away from it. So like what? So one way to think about this is, at the end of the day, one of the things we're up to is we're noticing all the versions of ourselves that come up and we're letting them go. And so we don't need to direct ourselves toward something, because the correct direction will emerge spontaneously in the moment if we're present. So it's extraneous to be like, well, like if I say, well, I'm always professional. You sometimes meet someone who's like highly professional and they have like a very professional voice and a very professional outfit and everything's super professional, and that's fine, but it's also fixed. Like, what if being a little unprofessional in that moment will build a piece of rapport that helps someone? There's always, so when we go towards it, now we're going toward a particular thing. And when we go toward a particular thing, we reify that thing, we make that thing the thing. And as soon as we do that, we're off the path. And so it's interesting because I see there's a lot of content out there around, if you meditate, these are the benefits, right? You should be more relaxed, you should be more open, you should be more rested, you should have more energy, right? So all of those statements are moving toward it. They're moving toward something. Well, so I meditate so that I can be more relaxed. Well, what if I'm meditating and I'm awash in anxiety? It's kind of cool tonight because, y'all are the only folks who came in. Both of you have been meditating a really long time. So we can kind of have, we can have a little more advanced discussion about, okay, so you've been meditating for a decade. Like, now what? And that's good. It's good to look at, because, beginning practice and more advanced practice are in one sense the same thing, but in another sense, they aren't, right? And so in the beginning, we're suffering so acutely. I mean, you have to be suffering pretty acutely to be even willing to try meditation. I mean, on its face, it's a little bit, it's not exactly fun, right? Like, everything is going well, you're probably not going to sit on a cushion for 30 minutes. Unless you're like, wow, things are hard, I need to try something. And then you learn to use your mind, you learn to be mindful, you learn to step out of the mental stream for a little while. And what happens? You feel better. It's like, oh my God, I got a little bit of relief from the insanity of my mental formations and emotions and repressed things and self-doubts and all the junk, right? And so then, from there we make a commercial. And we say, okay, yes, come to my mindfulness seminar and I will teach you how to reduce stress, be relaxed, let go of negative patterns and heal your life. And then here's Nansen, who's such a genius that he was the teacher who is arguably the most famous Zen teacher who ever lived. And he's saying, no. If you move toward it, you move away from it. No, wrong. So I'm always using that stretching analogy, right? Like, mindfulness is stretching for the ballet performance. The performance is your life. So, like, they're not kidding. Like, they really are saying, like, these ancient teachers, carry this into your life and be there all day. Like, when you wake up, practice your life. When you eat breakfast, practice your life. When you go to work, practice your life. Like, come back, come back, come back. Don't fix. Notice the kleshas. There's a word we use that basically means like stuck things, stuck formations. And we can see this all the time, right? Just ask someone about politics and watch the hair on the back of their neck stand up, and they'll like espouse an opinion very strongly. That's a klesha. It's a fixed view. And sometimes we can have fixed views that are also like right action. Like, I want to work for social justice and help the disenfranchised have a better life. Like, okay, you're trying to, it's right action, right livelihood, alleviate suffering. These are not bad things. But these ancient masters are not joking when they say, like, don't go toward any one thing. Whatever the thing is, let it go, come back, be present, and then see what naturally arises. Like, we have this wisdom within us. And then don't even go toward that. Right? Because then you're like, well, I'm going to allow my natural wisdom to arise. Well, now we're going toward that fixed thing. It's always about, like, see it, let it go. See it, let it go. And Joshu reasonably asks, well, if we don't try, how can we know that it's the Tao? Right? Because we can also just be like, well, I just won't try. Well, how is that the way? This requires a fair amount of effort. We're coming in here, we're meditating, we're walking around, we're ringing bells, we're doing all this stuff, practicing koans. Like, there's an awful lot of trying going on here. So, because it does require right effort. I mean, that's another one of the core teachings of the Buddha, right? One of the Eightfold Path is right effort. Effort is involved. And so there's this dance that we do, right? Because we deal with the relative, we deal with the absolute, we deal with the paradox. And so that means that we're moving in and out of, we set intentions and move toward things, and we don't attach to them, right? Like right now there's a fly landing on your glasses, right? That's dukkha, right? Nature of reality. Suffering always, right, is a component of reality. So here we are, middle of Dharma talk, flies, right? Do we move toward it or do we move away from it, right? Damn fly, right? Or, oh, I will be Zen. I will not, I will allow the fly to land and will not, Neither is right? Just be present, work with what is. And if I had a fly swatter, maybe we swat the fly. I don't know. But so, what does Nansen say? He says, the way, Tao, does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is illusion, right? So the reason that these teachers talk like this is because they're trying to aim you in the direction of the truth. You feel free to wave your hand around, whatever you need to do.
Just hope it doesn't go in my mouth, that's all.
So, these teachers are trying to point us in the direction of the truth. Knowing is illusion because we don't. Like, what is it that we know? Everything is impermanent. Nothing, everything is Buddha nature, which means it has no fixed characteristic. So, certainly from the perspective of the relative, we know things, right? This is my Rakasu, not yours. But also, like, one day I might transmit the Dharma to somebody here and pass away, and they might end up with this, right? Because, I have teachers who have their teachers of personal effects in like special places and on altars and whatnot. So, is it mine? Right? So, knowing is illusion, right? We have to allow there to be a space around the things that we know such that we're not completely attached. But then he says, not knowing is blankness. So that doesn't work either. I just don't know. I'll just be in not knowing. I just won't sit. Well, no, like sometimes a decision is required. When my daughter wants to eat 7 cookies right before bed, not knowing will not reach it. Right? Well, I just don't know if she should do that or not. Come on. This is supposed to make you more wise, not less. So, if you really attain the Tao of no doubt, it is like the great void, so vast and boundless. How then can there be right and wrong, right? So when we sit, right, and everything falls away, body and mind drop away, and we're just sitting in that field of presence, how can there be up, down, left, right? There's just the field. He says it's interesting, right, to have a spiritual teacher say, essentially, that how can there be right and wrong? What Nansen is saying is not that there are no desirable and undesirable outcomes, or that there are no desirable or undesirable actions. What Nansen is saying is that in the way, there is no right and wrong. Right? In other words, the thing that we practice in Zen is free of all of the concepts. It's free of all of the fixed positions, and it allows it contains them all. It's vast and boundless, meaning it absorbs everything that is, because it has no bounds. And so we then are also vast and boundless. That's the reason we sit, is to experience ourselves as vast and boundless. Because that's the liberation that the Buddha is offering, is you are vast and boundless, but you don't know it. So sit and experience it. And then when you fall away from being vast and boundless, come back. Why? Because it'll allow you to be a version of yourself that's healthy, but also because it's who you really are. Because we could talk about the benefits, but the benefits aren't it either. Now we're moving towards something. the goal is to be what you already are, which is this vast, empty field of presence. And then in working from there, good things happen. And also bad things still happen. You know, my teacher was talking to me yesterday about his son having a knee injury that has recurred for the third time. And he was like essentially just annoyed about it. I mean, not annoyed at his son, but annoyed at the event was occurring, right? And it reminds me of, I was on a retreat many years ago, and these two people were at a different lunch table than me, and they were speculating, and they said, well, you know, if an enlightened master got cancer, they wouldn't care because they're enlightened, so they're not attached. And I didn't say anything because they were in like a different retreat group than me, and I was in a silent retreat, so. But I heard them, and I sat there in my mind. I had a little argument with them in my mind, and the argument was essentially like, I don't think so. Like, I think if you burn your hand, you say, ouch. I think if you get cancer, you feel sad that you're sick, or you feel the effects of being sick, or maybe you feel angry. But whatever comes up, you feel that. Not, oh, I am detached and impermanent, and therefore it doesn't matter if I have cancer or not. I don't want effing cancer. I got things I want to do. You know, I happen to have known a couple of Zen teachers who've had serious health issues, and they were not, they're not dispassionate about it. You know, they were accepting of it, but they were not accepting of it in a way that would indicate that they weren't suffering or that it wasn't hard. Because hard things are hard. So, you know, easy things are easy. So there's a poem that we'll close with. Hundreds of flowers in spring, the moon in autumn, a cool breeze in summer, and snow in winter. If there is no vain cloud in your mind, for you, it is a good season. Right? Vanity meaning self-praising. Right? So if your mind is not clouded with vanity, for you, it is a good season. So there we are again. Like, who should I move toward being? Just move toward being, right? Don't move toward being something, move toward being. That's how we get the result that Zen is trying to teach us about. Okay, good.